right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related to leading yourself and leading others. I'm John Laurito, your host, today with a dynamite guest. I'm setting the bar real high on this guy because I've known him for many years, and I know he's a dynamite guy, and it will be a dynamite show. Jason Bourgo, welcome. Glad to have you, man.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. So, there's a ton I want to talk to you about, and I know listeners would love to hear about. But let me. I don't actually even know the answer to this question, even though I've known you for so long. But what was the moment you've been leading? For those people that don't know you, you've been leading financial services for years and years, very, very successfully. When was the moment that you knew you wanted to get into leadership, or was there a moment? Did it happen intentionally or by accident? What's that story?
That's a good question, John. So I've been in financial services for 19 years, and I kind of stumbled into the business after college, and I liked it. I liked the aspect of going out and prospecting for new clients and sitting down and figuring out what their goals are and helping them achieve that. And the company that I started my career at the time had a lot of new advisors that would join, the firm and then, stay affiliated in a branch or move on and create their own independent franchise, if you will. So just by the nature of how the business was structured, younger advisors like myself were asked at an early stage in their career to take a day or two out of their practice to teach and mentor brand new advisors. So looking back on it, it sounds a little crazy that somebody that might have been 6, 12, 18 months in, was starting to lead brand new advisors. But I found a lot of enjoyment out of that, and that led to me taking on broader leadership roles over the years.
Wow. You know what? That's funny. That is like really soon to get into that by most people's perspective. It's like, okay, you've got to get a few years under your belt. But did you feel at that time, so you were kind of tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, can you help lead some of these other advisors? Was that what it was? Or did you raise your hand?
That's exactly right.
Okay. So was that, how were you feeling at that point? Did you feel like, oh yeah, I have a lot to offer? Or were you thinking, what the hell am I doing in this role?
Probably a bit of both, but what I found is the same feeling that I had working with a client one-on-one and, being there at the moment that, their eyes opened up and they started to understand, what they needed to change on a daily basis or yearly basis to achieve their goals. Being able to do that through other advisors and getting the professional enjoyment out of seeing both, the advisor, having the same emotions or reactions or understanding of what needed to change, and then being able to lead through other advisors to impact more clients. Yeah. I always found that to be a really interesting and enjoyable aspect of the business.
Well, it's interesting too, because, and an analogy comes to mind. It's almost like, pilots when they're flying planes, there might be a plane that's, 10 miles ahead of another one, and they're relaying back some turbulence that's coming up. And they might not be, 1,000 miles ahead. They're 10 miles ahead. It's not like, as a leader, you weren't 3 or 4 years ahead. You were a few months ahead, but you still had a lot to offer. You could let them know what's coming down the road. And that's part of leadership, right? I mean, if you're better than and more skilled or knowledgeable than somebody, you're in a position to influence them in a positive way in that regard. And that's probably, you had some success doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then also, I'll forget exactly what the quote is, but the quote talks about how people that really refine their skill set, they get there by being able to teach others how to do it. So the ability to get out there and see more client scenarios and helping others get new clients, the more I did that, the better I got at it myself and the more I learned along the way. And I think that's rang true in all parts of my leadership career over the years.
It's funny. You just made me remember a story where I remember, Mike Reardon, who we both know, had asked me when I was in my maybe second year to teach a class on buy-sell agreements. And I didn't even know what a buy-sell agreement was. I had no idea. And I said, I can't teach a class on it. I have no idea what it was. He said, that's exactly why I want you to teach the class. And that process of learning it, getting to the point where I felt like I could do an okay job teaching it, made it be a topic that I became really well-versed in through my whole career. So it was interesting. Yet to your point, when you teach something, you become great at it. That's a whole different level of mastery.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. So so you got a bunch of people that are listening, all different industries and all different walks of life that might be interested in getting into leadership in kind of like a formal role. What would be your advice for that person if they're not in a formal role, they want to move up, they want to get promoted, they see that as a career track? What advice would you give to them?
A couple of things that come to mind, John. Number one is, and again, depending on the business or the industry that they're in, but having them sit down with their current leader and helping them understand what their career aspirations are, and putting together a development plan in place. To me, that'd be step number one. Once you know that you want to get into a leadership role, the other part to really be thinking about is, I think people have to be that leader before they're officially appointed to that next promotion or new title. And so you need to really start to not just continue to drive your personal business forward, or what's important to your daily key activities, but also start to assume the role of that leader before being officially promoted into it. And so I think when those two things come together, your leader's clear on what your aspirations are, you've got a plan in order to get there, and you're starting to do the role, good things will happen.
Yeah, that's such a great point. What do you think? So when you've gone, you have moved physically, so you've gone from one area to another. You've changed roles, so you've gone from one level to another. For a lot of leaders, that's challenging. And now you've just started. You got a great opportunity with Lincoln Investment as the regional VP down in the South. So you're leading a huge territory, 250 plus advisors. So when a leader goes through a massive change like that, either location, company, rank, position, whatever, what are some of the things that they need to do? You've done it, I know, a few times successfully. What are some of the things they need to keep in mind?
That's a good question. I personally think, John, that going back to things that we've talked about on and off camera about enjoying your life professionally and personally, I would recommend that when you look to move for a leadership position, that you got to make sure first and foremost that it's the right company, you've got the right leaders that you're working with. But I also think it's important that if you're going to pick up and move to a different area from a geographic standpoint, that it's going to be a place that's going to be the right fit for you and your family. And I remember when I moved from Maine to DC, I actually have a funny story. One of the things that I was nervous about was how much time am I going to spend in traffic. And so I lived in Portland, Maine, which was it's a beautiful little seaside New England town. And if traffic was really bad, it took me 10 minutes to get to work. And I'd not spent a lot of time in the DC market. And so my previous boss, Joe Lexner, recommended that I go down for a couple of days, rent a car and just drive around and get a feel for what it would be. And I ended up doing that and driving around one day, and I realized that there was hardly any traffic down here. And I'm zipping around the Washington, D.C. Downtown, the greater metro area. And I remember calling my father later that night and saying, I don't know what the complaints are all about. There's hardly any traffic out there. And it turns out it was Veterans Day or a holiday like that. But that would be my recommendation, is just to spend time in the area that you're going to relocate to, again, to make sure it's going to be a fit both professionally and personally.
That's a great point, and I don't think everybody's thinking about the job first, but you forget, if you're happy personally and happy with where you're living, it's a lot easier to do better with the job. And if you didn't like that area, you would have had opportunities in another area that you would love. I've moved around many, many times in my life. And I remember I was in Hartford, Connecticut. Everything was going great. Loved my life, loved work. And I was offered an opportunity to go up to Boston with Larry Post. And I said, I don't know. I don't think so. Thanks for the opportunity. And it was a great one, but I just didn't want to move. And he said, John, just come up for the weekend. Just come up, take a weekend, come on up, just like Larry does. And I did. And it happened to be this perfect, beautiful weekend. I was married at the time. And My wife and I went up, and it was just gorgeous. We fell in love with the place, and then went up there, and it was a great decision. So I think you're absolutely right. You got to love the place geographically where you're going to be as much as the opportunity, for sure. Oh, it's good.
I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, and also went to the University of Vermont. And it was interesting that to talk to the kids at school that had moved from down south and didn't understand what a northern New England winter was like, because they'd come to check out the campus in the summertime when it's a beautiful time of the year, and the lake is there and it's warm, and you get the mountains that are that are right there. So I think you want to spend the time to understand what part of the country you're moving to. But first and foremost, to me, it's about the opportunity from a professional standpoint. And I have people that reach out to me, from my previous company and others, and will run ideas by me as to whether or not they should relocate or take a different job within the company. And what I remind them of is what my old boss Joe Wexner had counseled me on a number of years ago, that when you're having success in leadership, there's going to be abundance of opportunities, and so you don't need to jump at the first one that comes your way. You want to make sure it's going to be the right fit, the right team, the right leader, the right area.
Absolutely. Do you think it's funny, and I'd love to get your perspective, because I definitely have some thoughts on this. Do you think it's good for people to stay in a role for a long time? Is there some merit to that? Some honor to that, and stay with the same opportunity for a long time and for many, many years? Or do you think it's better for people to take on new responsibilities, even if that means changing companies or changing, roles or whatever?
I think that depends for everybody, John. One of the things that I would recommend, though, is to make sure that you're always developing yourself professionally, whether it's getting a new designation or taking on some horizontal responsibilities across the firm or a larger part of the organization. If you want to stay in your current role, in order for the role to not get scale and perhaps have the business run past you, you got to continue to develop professionally. So I don't think there's anything wrong with staying in the same role. I was in my longest tenure in the different roles that I had was 9 years as a branch manager, and the complex director positions to oversee multiple branches started coming my way before I was really thinking about moving on to a different role with the company. But what I realized when I started to learn about the new opportunities is that I was starting to I don't want to say getting bored with the position, but it was time for me to do something different and expand my responsibilities. So again, nothing wrong with staying in the same role. Just keep developing yourself, keep challenging yourself, but also don't be afraid to make the leap and go to a different part of the organization, take on a higher role. In my case, like I just did very recently, switch firms to take on a larger responsibility here at Lincoln Investment. You want to make sure that when things start to get scale, I think your skill set and what you deliver to your people, in my case, the advisors, is going to be subpar. So when you get to that spot, you want to continue to challenge yourself professionally and get to the next level.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You people need to be growing, and that's one of the things you tend to get. Especially if you've done a role for a long period of time, it just gets comfortable. You know what to do, you know what to expect. There are no new challenges. You've kind of got everything wired tightly, and it's just going in there to maintain almost, which can feel good because you've got this machine running. But as far as your personal development and growth, you're not stepping out. You're not doing anything that's making you uncomfortable. And I see a lot of leaders do that, where they get to a point where they do stop growing and they don't even realize it, because there's some enjoyment factor because it's easy, but in reality, they're a year, 2, 3 years down the road, they're no better off. And I know that happened to me in a period of time in my career. That's what actually made me make the decision partly to go to Boston. Was I felt like my role, it was going great, but there was nothing that was making me uncomfortable. Every week I kind of go in there and do the same thing. So yeah, I think that's.
I see that, John. You and I coach advisors for a living, and I see that with advisors that stop taking on new clients and stop growing their business, where it just becomes a daily and weekly routine of servicing the existing clients. And a couple things happen just through natural attrition. They'll start to to lose clients, just whether it be clients that are taking money out for their retirement goals or passing away or what have you. And I find that the enjoyment level and the passion of those advisors that don't grow decreases significantly, and ultimately the business becomes less fun for them, and it's a subpar experience, for the client that's out there versus the advisor that's looking to move up market, looking to bring on a certain number of new households in on an annual basis, or just looking to add on to what they offer in their business, doing something above and beyond just the wealth management side, and perhaps targeting executives or small business owners, or just doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let me ask you a tough question. What you've seen a lot of different leaders out there. What have you seen, or what do you think is one of the more common mistakes that leaders make today?
Good question. I think if leaders just blindly follow a business plan or a playbook, so to speak, without getting a chance to know the advisors or their clients, or the folks that roll up to them personally, as well, and understanding what's important to those folks, both professionally and personally, and what is it that why are they working? What is it that they're looking to achieve? There's a lot that's lost there, and I've certainly been guilty of that at times, and I've learned from that. We're all busy. There's often a lot at stake with the businesses that we're running, but we can't lose touch of that personal interaction with the people that we lead, and that's been a challenge in the pandemic for a lot of folks, and people have gotten really creative in terms of how to maintain that that personal touch and personal relationship. And I think the people that have figured out how to do that are coming out ahead versus the ones that haven't.
Well, it's interesting because you do. There's a whole difference with this whole world that we're in right now, where everything is virtual. You don't have the physical touch. You don't have even just the presence. I was talking to two people in the last day, and I was saying something like, I forget what it was that brought up the comment, but this one person I had made some kind of comment about I'm 6'3" and 245 pounds. She said, I would never have guessed that. I thought you were significantly shorter. I'm like, well, I'm not. But she said, I'm 5'5". I'm like, well, or 5'3". I never would have guessed that either. Yet we'd been working together for a long time. And then somebody else who had said, I'm 6 feet. My point with that is, like, you sometimes you lose that connection that we naturally have when we meet people. And we see them, we see how their aura, how they move, their energy, whatever the case is. How do you make those connections? I mean, you're a super personal guy. You build relationships. You thrive on that. Are there any things that you've figured out, like, okay, in this virtual world, here's how I do a little better job of making those connections, even when I'm not able to be physically with them?
That's a good question, John. I'll say this, and it's no secret that one of the silver linings to the pandemic in the business world has been how far and how fast we've moved forward in leveraging technology. So I think the skill set that we've all picked up in doing what we're doing, today on the computer, on camera, those are going to be important skill sets that are going to be needed to continue to compete moving forward. And so there's going to be some great benefits to that. But I also think, when I'll speak for myself, as we get out on the other end of this pandemic, going back to just meeting somebody for lunch without an agenda, or meeting them for a glass of wine after work without a business agenda, and just getting a chance to communicate and really understand and see how they're doing, will go a long way to continue to build and retain the relationships. And I think people, there's certainly a time and place for the more structured, business conversations. And we're probably doing that, 80, 90% of the time during our work days. But what I tried to do during the pandemic was call people, again, just out of the blue, randomly, see how they're doing, make it a point to ask about, their family, or, how the pandemic is affecting them. personally, if it is. And I found that went a long way. We did some fun stuff through Zoom and to keep some the culture up and have a little bit of fun. But I think having the genuine personal touch went a long way, and looking forward to doing more of that in person.
Yeah, I'll bet. I know that's coming up around the corner, so that's going to feel good for sure. So I know that leadership, it's not just about you're a leader in your work life. You're a leader also personally as well. And I'm always interested to find out from leaders, what does that mean to you? So when you think about how you lead your personal life, what's important about that to you, and what does that mean, and what does that even look like?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I try and do is to eat right and have the right amount of exercise. And for me, it's a balance. I've never been one that can be at the gym every single morning at 5:30, and I'm not one that's gonna do a lot of the meal prep for the next 7 days that's there. But just like in business life, having an outline of what my week is going to look like as I make the turn from the weekend into the work week. I know what my schedule is going to look like, both professionally and personally, and that helps me stay on track with things like fitness and eating right, as well as having the right balance of social interactions and spending time with friends and family outside of work.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I know you from talking with you, I know you're a big biker and you're doing this major ride this weekend. What is that like? I mean, the mental side of doing, is it 100 and how many miles?
105.
105 miles. So with something like that, I mean, what's the mental side of that like? Because I can't imagine the physical side, but I'm assuming the mental side is probably even as bad, if not worse. I mean, how do you kind of lead yourself through that and coach yourself through being able to do something like that?
So it's interesting. At my previous company, that I had the pleasure of working alongside a number of triathletes that did Ironman triathlons. And John, that's not on my radar. Or that's not a gold mine. So I'm not here to talk about that. But what they would share with me is that the preparation from a fitness standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, happens over a long period of time. And once you get into the race, and they swim 2.5 miles, they run a marathon, they bike something like 120 miles. But they'll tell me that by the time they're in the middle of the race, it's 95% mental as opposed to to physical. So being able to just trust that you've done the right level of preparation from a nutrition and from a fitness standpoint, and being able to just grind through that is how those athletes are able to do it. And I think part of that's the same in business, right? Whether it's an important meeting that you're in, a stressful sales presentation, you want to make sure you've done your homework on who your audience is, you've done the right amount of preparation, exactly what's going to happen in case they say no, or in case the meeting gets interrupted. And being able to have that peace of mind that you can fall back on the preparation that you've done, and knowing that's going to get you to where you want to go is critical.
Yeah, that's such a great point. The preparation is so key, and that's the part that really does take a lot of discipline, right? I mean, whatever it is, whether it's work, whether it's a hobby, whether it's racing, that's where people ultimately fall short, because oftentimes you don't want to do it. That's the hard work that makes, the game time, so much better. Yeah.
I see that a lot with my golf game, John. So I probably golf half a dozen times each year. I don't go to the range. I haven't taken lessons consistently. And then I get out golfing and I wonder why my game is so bad.
I do the same thing.
Not any of the
I golf with my dad every time we golf. He's like, "Do you want to hit out some balls beforehand?" I'm like, "No, I don't, not really." He's like, "Well, he likes to hit out, balls beforehand, and I've a lot of friends do too, and that's how they get, in the rhythm." I'm like, "I don't know. I just get out there and hit, and then I wonder why I hit so badly." So
probably have the same mentality that I do. If I hit a nice drive off of the at the range, I'm thinking, man, I should have saved that for.
Exactly, right? I'm like, yeah, listen, I only have a certain amount of really good shots. I do not want to waste them on the range, you know?
Right.
But I guess that's why I'm a 25 handicap.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming to the close here and only got a couple more minutes, but what is you think about moving forward, and the name of this podcast is Tomorrow's Leader. What does tomorrow's leader look like in your mind? What are the traits that you think are most important?
I think it's somebody that's going to be able to, to really adapt to what this new world's going to look like, post the pandemic. And, one of the reasons, John, that I took on this new role with Lincoln Investment, and I'm thinking about the independent nature of the firm and how many, different business models that they have. I'll have to do a lot of learning to get up to speed with all of that. But I think the business world moving forward is going to be more flexible. It's going to be more complex. So understanding that the managers of the future need to do what we talked about earlier, be able to maintain that personal interaction, with their people, and doing so creatively, whether it be in person or through technology, as well as being a real student of their craft to differentiate themselves, from others, is going to be, critical. There's so much information that's out there. So, just about everybody can get out and have the, that baseline, level of knowledge. But I think leaders really distinguish themselves, when they can bring something to the table that, the majority of the leaders can't.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And as you mentioned before, knowing your people and actually taking the time, which, many leaders don't, they don't really take the time to understand their people's goals and their ambitions. And that's a differentiator, no doubt. People, especially nowadays, want to know their leader is a real person and cares about them, not just the mission or the vision, but cares about them individually and their piece of this whole, puzzle, so to speak.
And they know you've got a corporate or a business agenda that you want to drive forward, and that's okay, but they're going to care more about, their goals first and foremost. But when you can bring both of those paths together and achieve different results, I think that's really where the rubber meets the road.
I agree. And you can always tell the leaders that truly do care versus the ones that just say they do. There's actions behind that, that validate that. Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, good stuff. Great conversation, man. I wish we had more time. Obviously, we'll hopefully get a chance to have you back on this show at some future time. But if people want to get a hold of you, I know you're on LinkedIn, and I'll tag you on our post. Is there any other place that you want people to go, or is LinkedIn the best place to reach you?
LinkedIn's perfect. I'll make sure that my new contact information is updated there, and my cell phone number will be there. And it's leadership's a real passion of mine, so I'm thrilled to be on your podcast. I've watched a ton of them; they're great, and I'm happy to have anybody reach out to me to pick my brain, and I'll in turn look to learn from them as they reach out to me as well.
Awesome, buddy. Well, I appreciate you greatly and appreciate your time today. It's been awesome.
Great time, John. Have a great weekend. Good catching up.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader. Hope you enjoyed hearing from Jason Bourgo, leader extraordinaire, new RVP of the South and Lincoln Investment. He's available to contact on LinkedIn. We'll make sure we tag him on our social posts and put all his info in the show notes. But as always, like, share, subscribe, go down below, give a 5-star review. Let us know your thoughts. And of course, as always, I'm interested in your ideas of future guests or topics for this show. And in the meantime, hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for joining, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, John.